Question number 9, the Honourable John Boscawen.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and my question is to the Minister of Finance. By how much has government expenditure increased as a percentage of GDP since he became Minister of Finance?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, core Crown expenditure in 2008-09, the year which we were elected, was 34.7% of GDP. I'd have to say it had risen pretty rapidly from about 29% of GDP in 2005. Last year's half-year update projected expenditure in the current year at 34.9%, almost unchanged from 2 years ago. This figure did not include the cost of the February earthquake, which will be largely accounted for in the end-of-year accounts for this year.
The Honourable John Boscawen.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Supplementary to the Minister of Finance. Can he explain why, when measuring total government spending as a percentage of GDP, New Zealand's Tax Freedom Day falls 2 months after it does in Korea and more than a month after Australia? And does he believe the Korean National Party and the Australian Labor Party, quote, follow an extreme right-wing doctrine?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, we could have an argument over what measures to use. In the Crown accounts, total Crown expenses includes, for instance, all the expenditure by SOEs. We don't think that's a very useful definition. We use a core Crown expenses definition, and according to that, it hasn't gone up in the last 2 years. I might say historically this argument has been had before, and I know the member won't mind me pointing out that, for instance, last time New Zealand had a significant recession, well, one of the previous recessions, a member of his party, Sir Roger Douglas, was the Minister of Finance, and expenditure as a percentage of GDP went up every single year that he was the Minister of Finance.
The Honourable John Boscawen.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister of Finance, does he stand by his government's concrete goal of capturing Australia by 2025? And if so, will he at least cut expenditure as a percentage of GDP to the same level as Australia?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, the answer to the first question is yes, and the answer to the second question, the member will have to wait for the budget, but it's likely that government expenditure as a proportion of GDP will peak this year and begin dropping. And I'm sure with the support of parties who believe in smaller government, it will continue to drop.
Question number 10, David Shearer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Prime Minister, does he have confidence in his Minister of Foreign Affairs?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, yes.